about APA because I know APA is super confusing. So I'm going to go over some things on the Purdue Online Writing Lab, as well as, I'm going to find that file, as well as the APA in-text citations that I posted in the announcement section of our class. So a couple things to know. If you use something word for word from a source, you have to put it in quotation marks, and then you have to give the source's name and the publication date. Ideally, if you're using something like a book, you should use the page number, or if you're using something like a website, you should use a paragraph number. But for this class, I'm not too worried about that part, but I at least want you to use the source's last name and the publication date. If you are paraphrasing something, which means to take something and to put it significantly into your own words, then you still have to give the source's name and publication date. No question marks are used in that instance. So when I say significantly changed, I mean you cannot just go, oh, let me use the source for these 3 words and then I've changed it. No, it has to be like you're summarizing it into your own words. So first of all, a couple of things for formatting in-text citations. For APA, you typically use the author's last name, the publication date, and like I said, page or paragraph number. And then another thing to remember is that the punctuation in the sentence goes after the citation. So in your paper, like for this first one, it says, let's say you quote Paulo Freire. If you use Freire's name in the sentence, you just need the page number at the end. So here's our source, here's the publication year, then we have a comma when we're saying like as so-and-so says, mentions, points out, notes. Quotation marks capitalize that first word, and then in parentheses you'd have the page number, possibly if your paragraph number, and then the period goes after that citation. More than likely yours are going to look more like this one here, number 2. Where if you don't use the person's name in the sentence, you're going to do a full citation at the end. So again, we have quotation marks around our word-for-word quotation. In parentheses, we have the author's name, the publication date, and page or paragraph number. Again, I'm not too worried about the page or paragraph number for this class since we're doing business writing, but we do need the source's name, and then the publication year, and then the period, the punctuation, right, goes after the citation. I really like things that like rhyme and that are memorable, so think about that. Another thing that I really want to point out is that if you have a quotation, again, word for word, you need a signal phrase. A signal phrase is something that like introduces that quotation or leads into it. So it could be something as easy as as Freire points out, that's a signal phrase. It could be, see that'll go away. It could be something like this. Many teachers use skill and drill, which doesn't work. And then since that's a complete sentence, you can use a colon, and then that quotation kind of summarizes that introduction. But you cannot just have a quotation standing on its own. It needs to be introduced, like transitioned into your paragraph and into your sentence. Let's see. So incorporating quotations, this part talks about it, about using those signal phrases. So don't just drop your quotations in and let them stand on their own. So this one says like Freire states, you could again like lead in to it this way. You can do this one like right here is in a way that it actually works like grammatically into the sentence. That's why the E is lowercase. So a couple of ways that you can lead into it. And then this last little note here says, do not rely too heavily on quotes. Quotations should support your points, not make them. So that's a big point I want to make too, is that you want to make your points and write, and then use quotations to support what you're trying to say. So make sure that they are necessary and strong. Like I said, a really great place to go would be the online writing lab at Purdue. So here it is. I have it bookmarked because you'll see I'll refer to it as I'm grading your papers. But if you go here, it talks about like general guidelines. This format part won't really apply to us because we're not doing reference or research papers. You can go to the in-text citations. It'll tell you the basics, pretty much what I just put on that document. You can also look at the author. So for example, if you're like, oh, I have more than one author, but I have 2 authors, what do I do? If I have 3 to 5 authors, what do I do? So a couple of things there. If I don't have an author, what do I do? So if you don't have an author, then what you'll want to do is use like the article title. So it says cite the source by its title and the signal phrase, or use the first word or 2 in the parentheses. Titles of books and reports are italicized. Titles of articles, chapters, web pages go in quotation marks. So this is just an abbreviated title of whatever they were using. And then you have the publication year and, of course, punctuation after citation. Let's see, let's talk about the reference page, because I know that's where a lot of people struggle. Son of Citation Machine, Microsoft Word's APA formatting, that's all great, but it's not 100% accurate, especially when it comes to capitalization of article titles. So the first thing you want to do when you're trying to fit out your reference list is think, what kind of source do I have? So for example, let's talk about our textbook. It's a book, so I would go to reference list, click books, and I have this. There's a basic format for books, an edited book with no author, edited book with an author. So a couple of options there, but let's just look at the basic format for books. So again, I have my author. Notice it says AA. Those are initials. So in APA, you never use the whole first or middle name. You use the initials. Year of publication. If you have a full date, like it's an article like May 3rd, you would have 2016, comma, May 3rd in there. And then you would have the title of the work. So look at this example here and notice that not every word is capitalized. In a book, the first word is capitalized, and then the first word of the subtitle is capitalized, and notice it's italicized. Then of course you have periods, watch out for those, and then the location. So you would just use your city and state. If it's a popular city like New York City, you don't need the state. If it's Boston, you don't need a state, right? Well-known cities. And then the publisher's name. Since this is, I think we have the 11th edition, you can look at this example down here where it's a different edition, and you'll see how in parentheses you have ed period. So for ours, it would be like 11th, ed period, or whatever. Oh, here's a better example. Sorry. This way you can actually see it. So in addition, other than the first, so ours would look a lot like this one here. So we have more than one author. Notice we use an ampersand in between the 2 authors' names. It'd be the same for the in-text citation. Notice only the first word is capitalized because it's a book, and then in parentheses it would say 11th, ed period, and then in parentheses. Now if you have like a website, because a lot of your sources are coming from the internet, go to reference list electronic sources. If you got your website, if you got your article from like an online periodical, which is something that's produced periodically, like a magazine or a journal or something like that, online newspaper, you would use this one. Again, all you have to do is look at this and follow it step-by-step example. What's my author's name? What's my date of publication? What's the title of my article? Notice in the in the reference page, it's not italicized or anything like that. There's no quotation marks, and only the first word of the title of the article is capitalized, and then of course the first word of the subtitle. What's my online periodical title? Notice the major words are capitalized, it's italicized, so maybe you would have like Newsweek or Huffington Post or something like that. Then if you have a volume number, it's also italicized, no space. So this is what you do. You go through this like step by step. Do I have an issue number? And then you would put retrieve from. You don't need the retrieval date unless like the website's going to be updated or changed, like the CIA fact book will be updated or changed. But otherwise you don't need, like an article is not going to be changed, but a web page of facts might be. And then it gives you an exact example, so just look at that and compare it to yours. If you're using a database and you have a DOI, then you would follow this example here. Like if you used EBSCO or something like that, if there's not a DOI, you could use this. Articles from a database. And then if you actually have a real newspaper, or if you retrieved it from an online source, same thing. Electronic books, Kindle books, but here's the one, let's see. If you have one that is just a website, non-periodical web document or report, then this would be how you would do your website. So again, author's name, date of publication, title of the document, and then retrieved from. Now sometimes there are times where even I don't know exactly how to do something in APA and I have to go Google it. So let's just give you an example, because there's so many exceptions and like different versions of documents. So you can always go to search and you could put, how to cite a website in APA. And it will pull up, and you can just look at different websites and try to find one that is reputable, but like apastyle.org, you can look at that one. If you want to specifically find a university's website, you can put cite:/.edu. That makes it so it'll only search that in college on like edu websites. So Purdue, of course, comes up because it's a .edu, but if I keep scrolling down, here's like PSU. So those are going to be more credible than just like .com websites, especially for academic things. So anyway, that was really quick because YouTube limits me to how much time I have to post without paying. So hopefully you guys find that helpful. And if you have any questions, you can consult me or just do what I do, like how to cite a blog or something like that, and you can find it online. And then like I said, remember, do this if you're looking for a specific kind of website. If you look for a government website, do .gov. So see, .gov, they all come up like that. So anyway, hopefully this helps.